Here we are in Villa Rica, Georgia at the Pine Mountain Gold Museum, and probably wondering why we're here. As you know, we're getting ready to go look for the McIntosh gold here in a couple of weeks, and figured we get a little take on what gold is, where it comes from, and maybe what it looks like if we're lucky enough to stumble upon it. Luckily today we've got two gentlemen here at the museum. Director Wes Barringer. That's right, Wes. Yeah. And also John Powell's here with us, and I see right away we've got some Indian native artifacts here, and it's kind of neat how you start the tour with native stuff.
When we started laying out this exhibit, I reached out to somebody we know who's a full Creek, and he explained so much to me in terms of, you know, we have this conception, and it's based on Looney Tunes cartoons and things like that, that there's this one-size-fits-all Indian out there, right? And even amongst his own language group, there's just savage kind of animosity between groups that have warred historically over time, you know? Yeah. He has got no positive things to say at all about William McIntosh.
Yes, there was,
So what was beautiful about this place is that the Creek and the Cherokee actually lived in peace and shared the land for hunting.
So who was here before the Creeks? Was it, I mean,
they call them Paleo Indians. They're the mound building cultures.
Okay.
So if you travel to Cartersville, see Etowah Mounds, that's a good example.
Ocmulgee we've been to.
Right, all of that is an example of the cultures that predate the ones that we're talking about now.
Well, I still don't understand the fascination with gold, man. I mean, even, you know, take the natives out of it, even, you know, going back to the kings of Greece or whatever,
well,
you know, Rome.
Gold is the mineral that it doesn't tarnish.
Okay.
So it's extremely dense. It doesn't want to mix with anything else. It's shiny.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it stands out separately and becomes what we think of as a valuable commodity when we think of gold.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they didn't make weapons out of it or nothing.
Oh,
right?
it's useless. It's useless for weapons. It's too soft. Yeah. Right. So, its value to somebody that's not using it as a currency or a tradable kind of commodity is in ornamentation.
Do we know how far back, like, they first started messing around with gold? Like, I mean,
the Creek or
no,
just humans in general?
Humans in general.
I would hesitate to ask. I'm sure that there are some anthropologists that's got a theory on it, but way back.
Okay. And so somewhere along the way they were finding gold and melting it and making jewelry, and somehow it became like the golden rule. Those with the gold rule.
Well, it becomes associated with gods because it doesn't tarnish.
Oh, okay.
And so there's a religious, spiritual significance to it that is exported, you know, kind of out of the Near East thousands of years ago.
Pre-Pharaoh.
Right, exactly. That this material is somehow spiritually more significant because it doesn't tarnish, and there's your proof that God's God exists, whatever.
Right. There's nothing more resilient or shiny, like
right.
I said. Or
and you can try and mix it with aluminum, and it's not going to work. You can, but where you can take tin and nickel and you can mix them to make a new metal, you can't do that with gold. Right. Because it doesn't want to. So they're taking this as an example of the kind of what's the word I'm looking for? The special nature of the metal, and that's what starts it down the road to becoming, oh my God, gold, and then we end up with rings and everything else today.
Was this like the first area, maybe in Georgia, where gold was discovered?
As recorded, we've got documentation that dates back further than any other find. The problem with our spot here is the fact that our gold is a baby powder fine substance. It was very expensive to produce, and you had a lot of chemicals. You had to go through a lot of the soil to get ounces. We worked tons of the soil to get ounces. They eventually found Dahlonega had nuggets, so they abandoned us. After pulling only 20% of the gold out of the soil, they left it. We certainly still have about 80% of the soil here, of the gold here. But they had to go through a process of crushing large chunks of rock and then taking that sand type of material, dumping it into vats with mercury, cyanide, and then leaching the gold off of that.
Stuff you would, like you said, get probably arrested for today.
Yes.
It's every last bit of it would be illegal to dump into the environment today. But what you have to think about is miners, particularly in the time period we're talking about here, are
Which is 1825, 26.
1820s-ish, right? Are not dealing with the technological background that we have today. So a lot of this is learn as you go kind of mining. And most of it is just regular old placer mining. They're picking up stuff right on the ground that they can see and easily access. And what you'll find is the miners are, and forgive me for saying this, I know somebody will complain, but they're kind of lazy. They'll take the path of least resistance every single time. So when they come here and they're finding gold right out on the ground where they can pick it up, they pick it up, right? Well, then somebody over in Dahlonega finds a bigger nugget. They put down their tools, they go over to Dahlonega and pick it up off the ground. Well, then somebody in California starts finding gold nuggets the size of your thumb. They put down their tools and they go to California and start picking them up off the ground.
Or the Black Hills or whatever.
Or wherever, right? So they're just basically following that path of least resistance. But what makes this site especially significant is that the technology and the ideas and the know-how that they invent on the job here gets exported elsewhere.
Right.
It gets sent to Dahlonega, then they refine the process, no pun intended, and then they send that out to California and hence the rest of the world. So you're looking at a spot here where the history is partially the exportation of specific knowledge.
Right.
And some of the guys that actually worked in this site are responsible for finding silver in Colorado, things like that. These are guys that know how to do it now because they started working on it here.
Some would argue that's more important than the actual gold itself.
Right.
You know, we're doing a story about Chief William McIntosh and the treaty and the secession of the lands and all that. And evidently, some say yes, some say no, that he was paid in all this gold in 1825 when he ceded the land. Like I said, there's a lot of speculation.
Right.
It goes both ways. But just out of curiosity's sake, let's kind of like go back to 1825, and let's just say the government at Indian Springs did pay him all this gold. What, in your opinion, would be like the form of gold that he would have been paid in? I mean, maybe we can open up the safe here and look at the different samples again. I don't know if you want to grab that. This is so cool, this old safe here.
So what you see in here is...
Let's start with the pen. This is what you got here.
That's our gold. That's the flour gold that's kind of native to this site.
Okay.
You wouldn't have been paid in dust like that. It wouldn't make any sense. Flake, probably not. It would be something more substantial. It would be difficult to transport and store and everything else. You're looking at probably some kind of a crude ingot.
Maybe along these lines, or?
Well, those would be nuggets. It's certainly possible, although I doubt the federal government is dealing with something that's not standardized or, has a regular shape to it.
Okay.
So
how about coins then, like gold coins?
Certainly coins are possible. It wouldn't be my first assumption, depending on, or thinking about where we're talking about.
That's time frame.
Right. It's a long way to travel from an official mint. With something that is kind of kept a little bit on the secret side. I would think that you're dealing with some kind of a rough ingot, some kind of a little more homemade kind of finished product, not something that's stamped in a factory.
Now, would you have an example of what you're talking about along them lines? Or?
I can show you what...
more than likely is?
Yes, what an ingot would look like. These we made from gold molds that we actually have in our collection, and we did this with aluminum, so that's not gold, but we have something you can touch and hold to get a feel for the size, not necessarily the weight. But I would assume that if there was some kind of payment, which
who knows?
I hesitate to speculate on, but that it would be something like this, something that is regular in size, something that can be more reliably measured.
And they would just melt down the gold and pour them in the molds?
It goes right into a mold, yeah.
Now, do you have samples of that? Of the
Yeah,
molds
I can actually show you the actual molds that we use to make these, and they're actual gold molds as well.
So in your opinion, you're thinking this is
I'm thinking probably something along the lines of this.
Okay, that's sort of what they do with it now, just
right,
like
little bit bigger, a little bit more refined, probably a little bit better measuring, but something roughly just easier to transport, easier to store. It fits well in a crate, you know, that kind of thing.
Man, that would be a hefty little sum of money right there.
Yeah, right. It sure would. So when we made these, we built our own crucible and furnace, correct? And then we poured the aluminum into the molds.
By melting them in a iron pot?
In a crucible, yep, we did it. We used an iron pot, and then we poured them out. We took off the slag, which is the waste product from the process of melting the aluminum. And then you pour them into the mold, gives you the regular shape. And the actual mold itself is graduated, so you get exactly 20 ounces every single time.
Dang. Okay.
So that's the idea behind, that's why I would think that if you're paying somebody, you're going to use something a little more precise.
Yeah, and uniform,
exact.
and yep. So he got 100 bars of this, let's say, and easy to keep track of instead of, hey, here's a bag of nuggets.
Right,
okay.
or a leather bag full of dust.
And these just different sizes, I guess.
Correct, yep.
Wow.
That kind of 5-ounce bar is actually still very common today. We kind of, movies and film have given us this vision of a great big gold bar.
Yeah, like Fort Knox kind of stuff. Yeah.
That kind of a gold bar weighs so much money, you're not riding away into the sunset on a horse with it because the horse would collapse.
Right.
So most of your kind of transitory payment.
Yeah, Wells Fargo, whatever.
Exactly, is going to be literally this size.
And so this is kind of like we'd be looking for on the river.
I would think you'd be looking for this rectangular shape. Of course, the big key is going to be the color.
Right.
So nothing else in the mineral kingdom has that same color as gold. Nothing.
And even since 1825, it wouldn't have tarnished
No.
up it. Yep.
No, it'd
All right.
still be just as. It may be a little worn because let's say for instance, and this is all speculation. Let's say for instance, it is sunk in a creek. It's been exposed to natural forces of erosion and things like that. And gold is very soft, so it could be weathered.
Right.
But basically, you're going to be looking for that kind of an unnatural shape, I guess, is what I'm going for.
And that'll be the least of our worries if we find that gold. It's
Right.
like scraping off a little algae or something.
If Mother Nature has taken a little bit of a cut,
yes, God bless her. Yeah.
so be it.
Yeah, it kind of came from her belly in the first place.
Right.
So, yeah.
So